Most people don't think twice about closing their curtains at night. It's just habit, comfort, privacy. But in some places, it's the difference between being alone and being seen. Tonight's story comes from a student who moved into a quiet apartment building on the edge of the city. Nothing unusual, nothing remarkable. Until he noticed something. Every single window in the building was always covered. Every single one, except his. At first, it didn't seem important, until something outside started noticing him back.
A little about myself. My name is Michael. I'm a student at a state university studying to become a teacher. Nothing dramatic about that, right? Just a regular guy trying to get through lectures, pass exams, and figure out his life. But I want to tell you about something that happened to me not long ago. Something I still can't fully explain. And honestly, something I'm not sure I want to explain. Because the explanations I keep landing on are the kind that make it hard to sleep. I'm not originally from the city. Never really wanted to live in a dorm either. Too crowded, too loud. No privacy. So for a while, I lived in one anyway, because I didn't have a choice. But I saved up. My scholarship, some side jobs, a little here, a little there. Eventually, I had enough to rent a real apartment. A 2-bedroom place in an old building on the edge of the city. The kind of building that looked like it had been standing since the early post-war decades, sometime in the gray years of the 1950s, when they threw up concrete blocks as fast as they could to house a devastated population. You know the type. Crumbling plaster, narrow hallways, windows that rattle in the wind. The landlady was a woman in her mid-40s. I found her through word of mouth, not an agency. I hate agencies. Contracts, commissions, bureaucratic nonsense. This was simple. I showed up, she showed me the apartment, I handed her cash, she handed me the keys. But something about her stuck in my mind.
She seemed off. Not in a rude way, more like someone who was carrying something heavy, some private grief, some constant worry just below the surface. Her eyes had that dull, inward look you sometimes see in people who've been anxious for so long they've forgotten what calm feels like. I assumed she was sick, or going through a divorce, or dealing with debt. I didn't ask. She was a stranger. Her problems weren't mine. She spent about 15 minutes showing me around, the meters, the utilities, which tap ran cold before it ran hot, which radiator made a knocking sound at night. Normal stuff. But then, just before she left, she stopped and looked at me with an expression I can only describe as careful. Michael, when you go to sleep, always keep the windows covered with curtains. It wasn't a suggestion. It was the way you warn someone about something you've already seen go wrong. I kept my voice light. Why? The streetlights, she said. They replaced the bulbs recently. They're very bright now. The light comes straight through the glass. Makes the room feel like midday. All right, I said. Thanks for the warning. She nodded and left. I locked the door behind her. And I stood there in the hallway for a moment, thinking, that's not what she meant at all. I just couldn't figure out what she actually meant. Not yet.
I spent the rest of that first day unpacking and cleaning. The apartment had clearly been empty for a while. Dust on every surface, the smell of stale air and old wood. By 6 in the evening, I'd had enough, so I threw on my jacket and went out for groceries. The building sat in a quiet courtyard, a few benches outside, one elderly neighbor who barely seemed to leave her apartment. Occasionally, some older residents sitting in the cold, watching nothing in particular. The kind of neighborhood where the world moves slowly, and everyone seems to have been there forever. It was already getting dark when I came back from the shop. Winter dark, the kind that falls early and feels permanent. And that's when I noticed something that stopped me mid-step. Every single window in the building was covered. Every floor, every apartment, curtains drawn tight. I walked around to the other side of the building, thinking maybe it was just the streetlight side. Maybe everyone had the same bright bulb problem the landlady mentioned. Same thing on that side. No streetlights there, no reason to block the view. all curtains closed.
I stood in the courtyard for a moment, just looking up at the building. 40, 50 windows, all dark behind their curtains. And me, standing down in the snow, holding a bag of groceries, feeling like I'd missed something obvious, something everyone else already knew. I went upstairs, made dinner, sat at my laptop, and let YouTube erase the evening. I forgot about the curtains. I forgot about the landlady's expression. I forgot all of it. Until about 2 in the morning. That's when the dogs started. Not one or two, several of them, somewhere in the courtyard, barking hard, the frantic kind of barking that means something is wrong, not just a passing cat. It came right through my old Soviet-era windows, which rattled in their frames like they might just give up and fall into the apartment. Then the barking changed. It softened into whining. Something about that shift, from aggression to fear, made my stomach drop. I got out of bed and pulled the curtain aside. The courtyard was lit by the new street lamps, sharp, white, clinical light. A few dogs were circling the playground, tails down, refusing to settle. They kept glancing at something I couldn't see from my angle. I stood there watching for a minute. Nothing else happened. I went to the kitchen, drank some water, and went back to bed. I told myself it was nothing. But I didn't sleep well.
In the morning, I noticed the handprint. I almost walked past it. It was in the corner of the window, faint against the frost, just the outline of a palm and 4 fingers pressed from the outside. I was on the 3rd floor. I stared at it for a long time, long enough for my coffee to go cold. A handprint on the outside of a 3rd floor window, in the frost. My brain tried to build explanations. A ladder? Kids messing around? Some kind of condensation trick? None of them felt right. None of them explained the shape. Fingers spread slightly, like someone had steadied themselves against the glass, like someone had been looking in. I left for university in a hurry, and by the time I'd been through 2 lectures and a beer with a classmate, I'd mostly managed to file it under weird things I'll think about later. Later never came, until it did. It was around 10 at night when I came home. I was mildly tipsy, relaxed, got off the minibus and walked into the courtyard, and stopped. Every window in the building was covered again, except mine. My curtains were open. My window glowed faintly with the lamp I'd left on, the only lit, uncovered window in the entire building. I went inside. On the 1st floor, as I passed the doors, something happened that I still think about. One door opened, just a crack. An old woman peered out. Behind her, further back in the hallway, a man appeared. They both stared at me with that particular look. Not fear, exactly. More like the expression people make when they see someone walking toward danger and they don't know whether to intervene. Then the old man reached out and grabbed my jacket. His grip was surprisingly strong. He pulled me close, and his eyes locked onto mine. Wide, urgent, completely sober. "Kid, you're young. Run. Get out of here. Close your curtains, or it'll be bad for all of us. It's coming. It's already close. She's coming. Run." I shoved him off, called him crazy under my breath, went upstairs. But his words followed me into the apartment. She's coming. I sat at my desk and tried to open my laptop. I got about 5 minutes in before I closed it again. The dogs started barking. And this time was different. I don't know what made me go to the window. Some impulse I should have ignored. I pulled the curtain aside. There was something in the courtyard. It was standing on the playground, perfectly still, under the white glare of the street lamp. It looked like a person, but only approximately. The proportions were wrong. The head was too large or the wrong shape. The arms hung too low. It was staring up at the building. At my window.
I knew it was looking at me.
The same way you know when someone in a crowd has their eyes on you, some animal certainty that bypasses logic. Then it started moving toward the building. And it moved wrong. Not like something injured, more like something that had learned to walk by watching people, but hadn't quite understood why bodies move the way they do. There was a looseness to it, a sway. It crossed under the street lamp, and something turned over in my chest. It was smiling. Not the smile of a person, the smile of something that doesn't need to smile, but has decided to anyway. It reached the entrance of the building and disappeared from my view.
Then a hand appeared at my window, and a face followed it. Pale, dark eyes. That smile, wider, up close. Far wider than a face should allow. It looked at me through the glass. Then it knocked. Softly at first, then harder. The old window frame shuddered in the wall. I yanked the curtain shut and ran. Behind me, a crash. The window. Glass across the floor. Footsteps inside my apartment. I grabbed my jacket and my shoes, and I ran down the stairs so fast I nearly fell twice. As I hit the ground floor, I heard 2 slow, deliberate knocks on my apartment door. From the inside. I burst into the courtyard and looked up. It was standing in my window. Then it climbed out and came down the wall. Like it had no weight. Like gravity was something it was choosing to cooperate with. I ran for 10 minutes without stopping, without thinking, just ran. When I finally turned around, it was still there. Still coming. That horrible swaying walk. That smile. Thank God for a police car around the corner. I threw myself at it. The officers didn't see anything and tested me for drugs. They found nothing and let me go. I went back the next morning, packed everything I owned, and left. Moved into a friend's dorm room. Laughed about it after a few days. Started to convince myself I'd been tired, stressed, and spooked by a strange building full of strange old people. For a week, everything was fine. Then one evening, while I was heating up soup in the dorm kitchen, I looked at the window. A handprint. In the frost. From the outside. And in the glow of the street lamp below, a silhouette. Swaying. I still don't know what it wanted. I don't know why the curtains mattered. Whether they kept it out, or just kept it from knowing you were there. I don't know what the landlady knew, or why she rented that apartment to someone new after whatever happened to whoever lived there before me. But I close my curtains now, every night, without fail. And sometimes, when the room is dark and quiet, I find myself listening for the sound of knocking on glass.